They came in the thousands, not with rifles or tanks, but with long necks, thunderous feet, and a ravenous appetite for wheat. In 1932, a small Australian army unit set out to stop them with machine guns. What followed was less a battle and more an absurd, improbable comedy of errors. A military campaign that failed spectacularly against birds. This is the story of the Great Emu War. The year was 1932. The world was in the grip of the Great Depression. The men of Western Australia were trying to survive. Farmers in the wheat belt were fighting another enemy, emus. These giant, flightless birds migrated after breeding season and, drawn by crops and water, moved into newly cleared farmland. The birds ripped through fences, ate seed, trampled seedlings, and left farmers desperate. The problem became so severe that petitioners asked Canberra for help. Local police had trouble handling tens of thousands of emus. Farmers argued that standard methods, traps, bounties, and fences, were failing. In a move that still makes people blink, the government authorized military assistance. A small detachment from the Royal Australian Artillery, armed with machine guns and ammunition, was sent to the Campion district to reduce the emu problem. It sounded practical. It sounded decisive. It sounded inevitable. On the ground was Major G.P.W. Meredith, accompanied by 2 soldiers and 2 Lewis guns, WWI-era light machine guns, plus thousands of rounds. They drove into the scrub in a truck, men in slouch hats scanning the horizon. The plan was simple: find the emu mobs, open fire, and wipe them out. The soldiers expected an orderly cull. Instead, they would meet natural cunning and a bird's terrifying efficiency. On a November morning, the troopers found a flock. They engaged. Bursts of machine gun fire, birds falling in spasms of feathers and dust. But emus are fast and they scatter in tight groups, and the ones that didn't fall took flightless sprinting to safety. A small victory was claimed. A handful of birds stopped, but the larger mobs had vanished into the scrub. The soldiers realized the problem wasn't merely numbers, it was mobility and cohesion. Emus moved like living wind. When fired upon, the flock would split into smaller groups that darted away in different directions. The birds' speed and erratic movement made long-range, sustained machine gun fire ineffective. In one infamous encounter, a machine gun jammed as hundreds of emus streamed past, their bodies and legs a blur, leaving the men astonished and outmaneuvered. The result was far from the decisive, controllable operation the soldiers had imagined. After weeks in the field, official tallies were modest. Several hundred emus reported killed. Later summaries list numbers under 1,000. While tens of thousands of rounds had been expended, the operation had caused more embarrassment than relief. Farmers continued to lose crops. The army pulled out. Within months, the government returned to more mundane solutions: bounties, fences, and local control. The tactics had not matched the biology of the enemy. Word of the campaign spread quickly. In newspapers, the Emu War became a comic parable. Skeptics and satirists had a field day. Headlines joked that the birds had won. Overseas newspapers and columnists lampooned the idea of soldiers being foiled by flightless birds. The story lodged itself in the public imagination as a tale of hubris, absurdity, and an awkward mismatch between human technology and nature's guile. This was not a story of cowardice, nor of military incompetence in the classic sense. It was a tale about strategy, logistics, and species behavior. Machine guns were lethal when targets stood still. They were disastrously inefficient when used on fast, dispersed animals that used the landscape to their advantage. The emu's social behavior, speed, and the vastness of the wheat belt made them a practically unstoppable opponent for a small force with short-term orders. The wrong weapon in the wrong hands at the wrong scale. After the army withdrew, authorities doubled down on non-military tools. Bounties for emu scalps became more organized. In the mid-1930s, tens of thousands of bounties were claimed when the system was scaled up. A painful but far more practical solution than fielding soldiers with Lewis guns. Long-term, humans invested in fencing and landscape management, adapting to the birds rather than trying to annihilate them. Nature, as always, found ways to teach hard lessons. What makes the Emu War endure, and why it resurfaced online in the 2020s as a viral anecdote, is its cartoonish geometry. It is a narrative anyone can retell, a military machine humbled by a feathered enemy, a symptom of human overreach that is instantly memeable. The story reappears in documentaries, history lists, comedy sketches, and even a recent comedic film that reimagines the event in high absurdity, turning history into satire and restoring the emu to mythic status. In the digital age, the Emu War became not just a footnote in agricultural policy, but an emblematic internet story about modernity finding itself outsmarted by the unexpected. Beneath the jokes and the memes, there's a sharper truth. This episode reveals how fragile human plans are when they ignore ecology. The emus were not plotting military maneuvers. They were animals following instinct. But their impact on human livelihoods was real. And so was the desperation that led to a short, surreal military experiment. The Emu War is history's irony. We brought guns to a farming problem and left with a cautionary tale. Picture the last scene, a stretch of Western Australian scrub at dusk, sun flattening the wheat into gold. A few emus stride away, indifferent and elegant, heads high, leaving behind flattened stalks and the echo of distant, wasted fire. Men would remember the campaign and chuckle. Future generations would compress it into a viral meme. But the emus? They kept being emus, stubborn, resourceful, and utterly indifferent to human hubris.